When I first thought I would do Iphigenia at Aulis, I reread the play. Once I read the play for directing it, I realized that there are a lot of boring events in the play. And we live in the 21st century. We deal with the audience whose attention span has been tempered by MTV. Therefore, it becomes a challenge to make a boring play exciting. So I started rereading and rereading the play, and then it dawned on me that what would Iphigenia think if she was alive today? What would she remember? What would she say about these events? Around the same time, I met Michael Sham, who's a professor of classics. I said, well, you know, I'm doing a classical tragedy. Would you like to help me rewrite it?
I began to write up a translation and adaptation of the original play by adding passages from Thucydides and other passages from other plays of Euripides. I thought it was interesting. I couldn't really see it in my mind's eye. And I think he had some trepidation because he didn't have a feel for it, a grasp of it, a way of tackling it in mind, until I think he had a dream of the image of the dome, or her skull. And just really the beginning and last scene, the sacrificial act.
We thought that we would stage the play entirely within that split second from the moment that Iphigenia sees the blade until the moment that the blade has cut her throat, thinking that one's mind is able to foresee the future as well as review everything of the past in split seconds. So the idea was to create this skull, which is what the space is, the skull of Iphigenia, within which all of these are taking place. I called a couple of people that I wanted to design the play, or Michael that I wanted him to write, and a group of actors. And I said one thing. I said, if you are willing to fail, let's do something. Because that's very important. If we agree that we are going to fail, and it really doesn't matter, it's an experiment, then we can open ourselves up to come what may. And that's exactly what we did.
One of the things I love about Mahmoud is that he really means a collaborative effort.
He is very open. He's very receptive to what the actors have to say. He considers all the views involved, and he still has a very strong vision of what he wants the play to do.
He's very comfortable soliciting advice. He has no trouble saying, no, that I'm not quite comfortable with that, but he's as ready to say, that's great, let's do it.
I love Mahmoud. I think he's a great guy, a brilliant director. Some of the ideas he comes up with out of nowhere are beautiful. I mean, obviously he's got some unorthodox techniques. He didn't think I was standing up straight, so he strapped a board to my back for several rehearsals. And there's also a girl who's playing an old woman, and he made her wear a backpack full of 20 pounds of tools so that she would be stooped over like an old woman.
There's times that you think he's got really good ideas, and you're like, yeah, that's something I never would have thought of. But there's other times that you just either want to go off into a corner and cry or slap the crap out of him.
There's something about him where you're never quite sure if you're getting it straight.
He really did bring this show together, and I don't think without his eccentric hand, it could have turned out as well as it did.
Some people are addicted to opium. Some people are addicted to bicycling. Some are addicted to gym. I'm addicted to theater. And just like they would sacrifice their family for their addiction, I sacrifice mine for mine. The difference is that my family became my family knowing that theater is the most important thing. The first problem that everybody has in a college theater is actors. Especially, we do not have a theater department, we have a theater program. Our actors are not trained. And in this case, it was a depth problem because everybody who walked into the theater, we accepted them as actors.
This is my first acting experience since 8th grade.
This is only my third time acting.
It's my first stage 3 experience, but I've acted in other things.
This is my first real theatrical production.
Line. Sorry.
I'm really proud of the cast. They, on the first couple performances, were not very good. And by the end, people really just improved, needed to improve, and did improve.
Imagine that you're at the bottom of the sea, and there are pieces of wreckage of ships and coral, and and they're all in a kind of circle. But these wreckages all have the same brightness to them. They're not dark. They may be encrusted with some kind of coral or barnacles or something like that. But they're all like beige and gray. And there's an eerie silence to the whole thing. I started thinking completely abstract. And then I came up with the model that's downstairs with these structures that are nondescript. They don't represent anything. But it's more like a big jungle gym, see, so that the actors can leap on them and jump and bang on them. Because Mahmoud's a very physical director. He likes the actors to move around a lot and grab things and pull themselves up. And last week I was dressing the set, and I went down and I brought burlap and all sorts of stuff, and I was wrapping these things to make them look less and less like a wooden structure or a pipe structure. And then so he comes over and he says, well, this is good the way you're doing this. And then later we're going to paint everything. I said, what do you mean paint everything? We don't have to paint these. He says, oh yes, we have to make them all look nondescript and like that. And for the good of the set, I had to paint those structures. Saturday morning, I came in early, 9:30, and before anybody arrived, and I sat there in the silence after they had primed everything the night before. So everything had a coat of white primer on it. And I just sat there in the silence. The whole thing had this spooky kind of sacred feel to it. It was a little awesome because I thought, oh my God, what have we made here?
I was part of a group that's sort of loosely calling itself the Creation Project that Mahmoud was also part of this past summer. So I met Mahmoud through that, and after just a few meetings he said, I've got this play coming up, would you be interested in doing the music for it? And he sort of laid this whole idea on me and told me about the play, but then also told me about how he was going to stage it, how he thought it was going to be this very interesting take on it, how it's going to be very contemporary because of the war that's going on now and how these issues seem to continue to repeat throughout history. We're really taking the idea of the head seriously. We're in a mind, there's constant mental activity. The mind is dying, there's spits and spurts of other kinds of information going through it all the time, and that the sound would be more or less continuous. And you want to set up the idea that there are other streams of thought happening, undercurrents behind scenes, things that can be accented behind scenes, or other ideas that are coming up, and that would be the role of the sound. So even when there's no express music being made, and a lot of those ideas where things were going to be more musical have been trimmed, cut back. But the idea that the sound is acting behind the whole show and going most of the time has remained.
My name is Jason Stephen Murphy, and I'm the video director for this show. I was brought in with the idea that the video would not be necessarily advancing the plot, in that for most of the discussion of what the video would have, it never really involved Iphigenia on the screen or action taking place on the screen. So the idea was at the beginning to use it as texture and to contextualize it, because there's some direct references to contemporary wars and violence and the idea of bringing it into the now, but the video was really going to be the place where that was brought in. Not just for texture, but to really hit it home that, this wasn't, these ideas of sacrifice in the name of war just weren't things that were happening back in, BC or ancient Greece. These are things that are happening right now. And so, I mean, he really kind of had me going out looking for images with that in mind, the idea of violence begetting violence. Working with Mahmoud's really interesting in that he seems really interested in like really pushing this, and that's very exciting, because if he had said, hey, we want you to do video for guys and dolls, it's going to be this is what it's going to be like it's been for the last 50 years, I just said, I'd rather flip burgers at like McDonald's or something. But when he said like, this is a very open scene, and this is going to be something that hasn't been done before, and we're really looking for people that are interested in coming along as I push these borders, that was really exciting. And I hope that people are open to the fact that he's really kind of pushing them.
I don't know, to be perfectly honest, I don't know how much the audience is going to get. And he assures me, no, they'll understand it. Through lighting, through mood, through the sound, music, through visuals. They'll get the sense that this is not real time.
I have always thought that theater is really not what's happening on the stage. Theater is what happens in the mind of the audience as they leave the stage.
What matters is that person sitting there on the way home, turning off the radio and saying, wow, just now driving home with my, cup of coffee that's 2 hours old, like, I'm now putting it all together. I think that whether people like it or not, it's not relatively unimportant. I think that however this goes down, this is going to have a pretty big impact on Siena, and hopefully the way the audience, Siena or otherwise, view what theater is and what theater is capable of.
Honestly, I do not know what to expect. I think the play will be as much of a surprise to me as it's going to be to the audience, and that I like.
I think it's going to be very jarring for some people who are not used to environmental theater, but some people get a lot out of it, and some people will hate it. We keep saying the only thing we don't want is apathy.
I think it'll be completely different than most plays, because it's all one act. It's really all one scene. You never have the blackout and the curtains closing, and you never have anyone off stage.
It's going to be an awesome show. Like once we actually get to opening night, it's gonna be one of the best ones we've put on.
We are not here to answer any questions. All that we see has not really happened. We watch.
We remember.
We listen.
Oh, that's not fair. Yes, but it works wonders.
9/11.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass
This is not justice. Could I argue against this? And what of this? Should this man march to battle against the entire Greek army and die for the sake of a woman?
Now it arrives in the fullness of time.
Lay not a hand upon my body. I offer my throat without hesitation. In the name of the gods, please don't touch me. Just kill me, so that I may die a free woman.
It's hard to walk away when you feel like you've done nothing. I don't feel that way about this show. It was a crazy, often frustrating,
long, arduous trip, and it was worth it. It was really worth it. Like, we did something amazing, and I really didn't think the show was going to be as well received as it was.
You know, for what it was, for those 8 nights of performances, I thought it went off great. I was really impressed.
I wouldn't really have changed anything now that I've seen it. Asked me 2 weeks ago, I would definitely said, oh, we're going to change a lot because this is not going to work. And it worked. I think once the audience walked in, once the costumes came on and lights came down, I think it worked. I think it was a great success.